Hey, what's going on everyone? Hope you're all doing well on this incredible Tuesday. Today we are looking at Ephesians 5, then just one more chapter, and we are on to the next book. Can't tell, I love campfires or just being by a fire, especially when it's cold at night. That's why I'm out here. All right, let's kick this thing off. You're watching the Bible vlog. One of the most fun things about having kids is watching how they mimic what you do. I mean, it's amazing what you can tell from children, even about their home life and upbringing, just from the way that they carry themselves. Well, in the same way that my kids will often try and do the same things that I do, we're told by Paul that we should do the exact same thing when it comes to God. So look at verses 1 through 2. Therefore, be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet smelling aroma. Now, while we are told to imitate God and walk in love towards others, Paul also draws out an extremely important point about sin and wrongdoing. Now, what he's really doing here is contrasting the conduct of believers and non-believers in areas of sexual immorality, but the same insight really applies to all areas. Now, Paul often uses the words light and darkness to make these comparisons, but go ahead and look at verses 8 through 13. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret, but all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light, for whatever makes manifest is light. Now, there is something really important here to understand and remember. Light exposes things that are hidden. See, sin of any kind, but especially when it falls into more of a sexual category, is most easily done in secret. Many struggles that people deal with today, the reason they have to keep battling it is because they keep hiding it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you necessarily go proclaim every wrong thing that you've ever done privately, but find someone in your life that you can talk to about the issue and then bring it out of the darkness. Having accountability on something forces us to deal with it. All right, let's shift gears here for a bit on this last section with Paul discussing marriage. So go ahead and look at verses 22 through 24. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as also Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. All right, ladies, let's talk for a moment. To many of you, this can sound horrible, especially if you have a very domineering husband. So does this mean that you just have to do every single thing he tells you without ever having a word otherwise? Well, no. What Paul is talking about here is the different roles that are to be played by husband and wife. Now, Paul is not teaching that men and women are unequal. In fact, we know that when God created Adam and Eve, he made them equal. He made Adam first, signifying his role as leader and initiator. Now, God created Eve from Adam and brought her to Adam to be his helper in the task that God had assigned to him. So she was made to complement, nourish, and help her husband. Now, this doesn't minimize a woman's role at all, but it does define it. Men and women were created equal, yet different. So is all of the responsibility just on the woman? Not at all. Let's keep reading and look at verses 25, then skip ahead and we'll look at verses 28 through 31. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. Now verse 28. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh and of his bones. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Men, you have a responsibility as well. You are the leaders, and some of you all need to start acting like it. Some of you need to start cherishing the wonderful wife that God has given you. Some of you need to take the spiritual reins of your household. To be honest, some of you don't even act like men. You act like boys. If that's you, it's time to grow up and take on the responsibility of being the leader in your home. You provide and you take care of your family. Don't shovel your responsibilities onto your wife. You do what God has called you to do. You provide for and you cherish that wonderful bride of yours. Ultimately, men, you need to look at Jesus as your example. The way he loved people is the same way you need to love your wife. Cherish her and love her just as yourself, because just like what Paul wrote about, God now views you and your spouse as one. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for us today with chapter 5. Heavens, there is a lot of info in each chapter. Now, I know some of you all complain like, hey, you skipped verse 7, or you didn't talk about this part. And you're right, inevitably, I won't be able to get to it all, which is why it's so important that you read along. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday. We will see you back here tomorrow for chapter 6.